My name is Annalyn Dela Cruz, and my topic is on probiotics and its effects on Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia. It's a degenerative disease of the brain, and approximately 5.7 million Americans have AD as of 2018. And right now, there is no cure. So these are the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease or AD. And these symptoms, they um, get worse over time. And so early on, the most common symptom is memory loss. There's also an impaired cognition, and there's also confusion as well. And those symptoms could also lead to behavior changes. They start to feel paranoid or feel frustrated and angry and very irritable. And as this disease and the symptoms begin to worsen, the person will start to forget how to do simple tasks that they have been doing every day, such as brushing their teeth and getting dressed. They forget who they are, they forget who their family members are, and it's it gets to a point where they are going to need a caregiver. And these are some AD statistics. So, about two-thirds of the people diagnosed with AD are women, and older African Americans and Latinos are more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease than older white Americans. Older African Americans are two times more likely to develop AD than whites, and Latinos are 1.5 times more likely to develop AD than older whites. And this disease is found in people over the age of 65 years old, but there are early onset symptoms that you can see before the age of 65. On average, after being diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, a person with AD would live um, 8 to 10, on average, 8 to 10 years after the diagnosis. Currently, there is no known direct cause for Alzheimer's disease. Although genetics does play a role, um, again, not enough proof or evidence to show that one thing directly causes Alzheimer's disease. Age is a risk factor. Again, aging does not cause Alzheimer's disease, even though it is found in people over the age of 65. It's a risk factor because many people with Alzheimer's disease develop it when they are older. Chronic stress has been another risk, or it is another risk factor of um, developing Alzheimer's disease because chronic stress can lead to so many other diseases, and also, or even disorders such as inflammation, that can lead to Alzheimer's disease. And there is inflammation in the brain of people with Alzheimer's disease. And so, inflammation is a risk factor. Another risk factor is lack of sleep. And that lack of sleep doesn't mean a few nights without sleeping well, but lack of sleep means almost every night for years you aren't sleeping the recommended amount, which is 7 to 8 hours a night. Um, and so the body doesn't get to really recharge. And so, and your brain doesn't get to recharge. And so, as of lately, the lack of sleep is being um, looked at as a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. So, probiotics and its effects on rats with Alzheimer's disease. So, I found this study, and the purpose of the study was to assess the cognitions of rats and also examine their brains. And the rats in these studies were injected with this D-galactose, which induced Alzheimer's disease, and it sped up their aging process. It made their skin loose and made their hair thinner, and caused the um, plaques to form in their brain, similar to the AD person. And the control group were not treated with probiotics, and the intervention group were given probiotics. Well, the probiotic that was specifically given was the Lactobacillus plantarum, and in order to measure their cognition, they underwent a maze test. Now, this graph shows the cognitive behavior, and I apologize if it's a little blurry, but this is a cognitive behavior, and the results that they got from the maze test. And so the higher the bar is, the longer it took for them to complete the maze test, or also the poorer they did on the test. So if you look at the red graph, those are the rats that had Alzheimer's disease and were not taking probiotics. So you could see that they had taken a longer time, therefore did poorer on the test. And they did this maze test on the 30th day, which is the graph on the left side, and on the 60th day, which is the graph on the right side. And so you can see that in the 30 or in the 60 days, their performance decreased even more. And the rats that had Alzheimer's disease and were taking the probiotics is seen as the green bar. And you can see how in both the 30th days and the 60 days, they did a lot better on the maze test compared to the rats that were not given probiotics. And another thing that was assessed in this study was the acetylcholine levels of the rats. And acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter, and in people with Alzheimer's disease, the acetylcholine levels are decreased. There's a significant decrease in their acetylcholine levels. And so looking at the red, again, those are the rats that had AD that did not receive probiotics. And they looked at two regions of the brain, the hippocampus and the cerebral cortex. And you could see that in the red, their acetylcholine levels are very low compared to the other groups. And the bar that is green are the rats with Alzheimer's disease that were given probiotics, and you can see that there is a significant increase in acetylcholine levels compared to the rats that were not given probiotics. And this image is showing the brain of the rats, and I highlighted the two that I'm focusing on. The one on the top, where it says amyloid core with APP aggregates, you could see that amyloid plaque that I mentioned earlier that is found in people with Alzheimer's disease, and you could see that plaque in those, and those are the rats that were not treated with probiotics. And if you look at the bottom highlighted picture where it says AD plus LPCC, those are the rats that had the probiotics, and you almost can't see any plaques. The arrow that this is that it's pointing at, I think it might have been a very small plaque, but it looks like nothing compared to the plaque of the control group. So this study did show that the rats with Alzheimer's disease that were treated with probiotics did significantly better on the maze test than the rats that were not treated with probiotics. And also from the graphic, the neurotransmitter acetylcholine levels were increased, or they were significantly higher compared to the control group. And also, though the amyloid plaque that forms in the brain were more prominent in the rats that did not have or did not receive the probiotics. So these are really big findings. And now I wanted to look for a study that where they assess the effects of probiotics on humans as opposed to rats. And the rat study was extremely interesting, but I just wanted to see if they had something on humans. And so I came across this article, Effect of Probiotic Supplementation on Cognitive Function and Metabolic Status in Alzheimer's Disease. And in this study, they assessed 60 patients with AD, and the patients' age were between 65 and 95. And they assessed their cognition by having them take what's called a mini mental state exam, or MMSE. And these groups were divided into two groups, the control group and the intervention group. The control group was not given any probiotics, and the intervention group was given 200 milliliters a day of these probiotics here: Lactobacillus acidophilus, Lactobacillus casei, Bifidobacterium bifidum, and Lactobacillus fermentum. And the results of this study show that the people who took probiotics performed significantly better on the mini mental state exam compared to people who did not take probiotics. And so the results were very similar to the study of with the rats. And so it was very interesting to find that there was this significant difference in the cognitive functions of people after taking probiotics. As of lately, it seems like probiotics are becoming increasingly popular, but the idea or concept of ingesting living organisms was not introduced until the early 1900s by Eli Metchnikoff. And in 2012, according to a National Health Interview Survey, only 1.6% of adults had consumed probiotic or prebiotic supplements in the last 30 days. But the consumption of probiotics quadrupled from 2007 to 2012. These are some lifestyle recommendations to prevent Alzheimer's disease and also to delay the progression of people with Alzheimer's disease. The first thing is to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep each night. I had mentioned earlier that the lack of sleep persistently is a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. It's very important for the body, the brain to get plenty of rest each night and to be able to recharge to function properly. Another recommendation I came across was to follow a Mediterranean diet, which consists of whole grains, fruits, vegetables, healthy fats, and to limit sugars. My personal favorite is to exercise at least 3 to 4 days a week, 30 minutes a day at a moderate intensity. And these exercises can be unique from person to person, depending on their capacity, what they can do. Um, I personally recommend strength training as someone who majored in kinesiology and worked in a gym. I just recommend just moving and doing something that you enjoy, but just to keep the body active. Another lifestyle recommendation is to find ways to cope with stress. Stress is definitely something that is inevitable, and I believe that finding the ways to cope with stress in a healthy way, whether it be meditation or even exercise, walking at a park, spending time with family or friends, doing things that relax you, like hobbies, are important to have in your life to cope with the stress because chronic stress is a risk factor. And I also am becoming a big believer of consuming probiotics. And after reading more about probiotics and about gut health, it's very interesting, and it seems like it does a lot more good than it does harm. And so, consuming probiotics and um, could really be beneficial for everyone. There is no cure for Alzheimer's disease yet, and we do not know the cause of it just yet. I believe that these studies are leading us in the right direction to find the cure and the cause, and looking at the gut health and brain connection might be the key. My grandmother has had Alzheimer's disease for over 10 years, and it's very sad to see someone that you love, someone who you grew up with, someone who was so strong, develop this disease and not be able to take care of themselves and completely forget who you are. I'm hopeful that these studies will lead us to the direction of finding the cause and the cure. And for now, only time will tell. But I believe that we are one big step closer.